Let's start the story with a little thought experiment. Imagine living in an age where information is a rare commodity. Education is not very valued and you, as many other people, are illiterate. Now imagine a man coming upon you. This man seems very intelligent, an eloquent speaker with piercing eyes, flowing hair and a long beard. People around you mumble about the wonders this man is capable of, that he can see the future and can talk to God. Imagine the powers this man would have upon you and your peers. This multi-part story is about such a man that came into the spotlight of the world and changed it forever. Grigori Rasputin. Russia in the end of the 19th and beginning of the 20th century was probably the most backward state of all the big European powers. The peasants west of the Ural Mountains were still under serfdom, a status that makes you merely more than a slave to society. The empire had a literacy rate of about 15% and was still ruled by an autocrat who described himself as only having responsibility to his conscience and to God. And the official faith of Russia, the Russian Orthodox Church, was seen merely as a branch of government, corrupt and filled with priests who were only informants to the secret police. The mood of the population was dire. Rasputin was born as a peasant in western Siberia, in a town called Pokrovskoye. In his early years, Rasputin was seen as an outsider and a drunkard. The sexual escapades of Rasputin, even when he was married, are famous until today. And he wasn't subtle about it either. There are several stories about him sexually assaulting women from the town. All in all, Rasputin was not a very productive member of the community. And if destiny would have played it out a little bit differently, Rasputin would have stayed that way for the next 40 years or so. As the story goes, 2 horses vanished from the village. Rasputin had a reputation for stealing and spending the money on alcohol, so the town meeting brought charges upon him. The evidence, though, was not very compelling, yet they wanted him gone, so they decided to ban him from the village, for a time at least. Rasputin, showing us his cunning and quick thinking for the first time, suggested a different solution. He would go on for a pilgrimage to the 500 kilometers away monastery of Zar Nicholaus and pray for salvation from God. The town meeting agreed, and this decision would change the life of Grigori Rasputin forever. About 2 or 3 weeks later, he reached the monastery. Rasputin was not idle for long, and he decided to ask a certain Brother Makary for guidance and mentoring. Brother Makary was illiterate like Rasputin, but was still a very eloquent talker about the liturgy. He had a great following in St. Nicholas and told the population the gospel in words the peasants of Siberia could understand. This hit the mark with the population, and Rasputin would not forget his example. The time at St. Nicholas would lead to Rasputin becoming a deeply faithful man who was determined to lead the people of Russia. After learning how to write and read and starting his own little cult, he made himself back to Pokrovskoye as a different man. Cunning, sharp eyes, upstanding, eloquent, and with the feverish faith of a freshly converted zealot. In this time, Rasputin would have one of his earliest visions. In a way, only Rasputin can explain it. The Virgin Mary showed herself before him. She commanded him to take another pilgrimage and become the leader of the people in the faith. To lead Russia out of its misery and take it to a better and simpler future, where the faith was anything anyone needed. So he did, and this theme would stay throughout his life. He would visit Mount Athos, the center of Eastern Orthodoxy, Jerusalem and many other holy sites. After expanding his cult, Rasputin wanted to go bigger, so he decided to go to St. Petersburg to find his luck. The aristocracy of St. Petersburg was sick of the classical Russian Orthodoxy. Mystics and spiritualists were heavy in demand. This would allow Rasputin to quickly rise through society. Johann of Kronstadt, one of the great scholars of the Orthodoxy, would take Rasputin in and would lead him to the highest circles of the empire. His reputation as a miracle healer, as a clairvoyant, and as a mystic would spread around the city like a wildfire. Rasputin was very talented in spotting powerful people and getting them to help him rise in power and regards. His past as a peasant of Siberia helped him too, as this was seen as exotic and helped him get away with many things. And soon the Tsar and his wife would be taking notice of him too. Zar Nicholaus was not what one would call a great leader. The successful bombing attack on his grandfather Alexander would scar him for life. Adding to that, his father would be cruel and his mother would be very soft on him, which led to very low confidence on the part of Nicholaus. Their relationship with his wife, though, a German noblewoman and a granddaughter of Queen Victoria, was always loving and kind, and she would have a great influence on the Tsar. Now, the youngest child, only boy and heir to the empire, Alexei, had a very difficult and life-threatening genetic disease. This disease, called hemophilia, would cause the young Tsarevich to get heavy bleedings on the smallest accident. Hemophilia back then was not treatable and definitely life-threatening to the deceased. The physicians didn't give the young man much of a fighting chance. In 1905, Rasputin would meet the Tsar and his family. The Tsar himself would describe Rasputin as an incredibly interesting man, as a man of faith. The Tsarina herself, a deeply religious woman, would be amazed by his knowledge and thought of Rasputin as a deeply religious man, a holy man even, who could help them with the sickness of Alexei. His reputation as a miracle healer was well known, and the Tsarina thought that maybe Rasputin could help the young prince. At one of the attacks of Alexei, the Tsarina was desperate. The physicians couldn't help him anymore, and everybody lost faith in the life of the little Alexei. In a last moment of desperation, the Tsarina called for Rasputin. He showed up and spent the whole night on the side of Alexei. The next morning, the whole palace was very quiet. The Tsarina entered the chambers of Alexei, and he too was sleeping like a baby. Rasputin, sitting beside him, looked calm at the Tsarina. "His demons are gone now," he told her. He stood up and left the palace. The whole family was amazed by the powers of Rasputin and were grateful to the end. Rasputin would become the new personal healer and spiritual guide of the young prince. This would be the first high point in Rasputin's power, but Rasputin had made himself many enemies in town with his sexual escapades and his quick rise to power. This would not be without repercussions. What do you think about Rasputin? Was he a charlatan, or was he just a lost man with a silver tongue? Let me know in the comments. Oh, and if you like this video and don't want to miss the second part of the series, please subscribe.